Today's topic is about the bad recruitment practices that scare away the best talent. So as I started, I said that getting the best talent is never an easy job. And one of the struggle that most recruiters go through is having jobs but failing to get the right people. But sometimes it's not about lack of qualifications in the market. It's not about it's not about failing to get the right people. It's not about lack of qualifications or lack of that talent of competencies in the market, as I've said. You see some companies re-advertising a job and you'll wonder, like, why would a job be re-advertised like twice, thrice, if there are millions of people out here looking for jobs? Is it really normal? So sometimes it's really how you position your recruitment process. It's really how a company comes out to the candidate. And you know, guys, we are in an era where people know their rights. We are in an era where people know what they want. And we are in an era of information and a lot of enlightenment. So people really know what they want and they know what they'll not associate with. So it's not that era where job seekers were desperate. I refuse to agree that job seekers are always desperate. Not every time. And if you're going to hire the desperate ones, then you're not going to get the best people for your company. So what are the mistakes that you're doing as an employer or as a recruiter that is actually scaring the best talent, that is making you not to fill in positions with the best people as you should, and ultimately damaging your employer brand? So that is what we want to talk about in this video. So one of the worst recruitment practices happens at the interview level. And that's going to be my number one. And that is asking wrong questions or wrong questioning. So wrong questioning is a common mistake that most recruiters or employers or hiring managers do. I have heard of instances or in events where a candidate or a job seeker will say that, you know, I went to an interview in that company, but honestly, I feel even if they give me an offer, I will not go. And you ask them why, and someone will tell you, like, it's because of how they interviewed me. It's because of the type of questions. Have you ever gone to a place interviewing or being asked questions and you felt like they were improper? And I've had bold people walk out of interview rooms and say, you know what, that's not a question I'm going to answer because it does not have anything to do with evaluating my ability for this job. So wrong questioning is one of the reasons that make you lose good candidates. And I'll give you different categories of wrong questioning. One example is asking questions that are not relevant to the job. This could be personal questions that test or get into a candidate's personal life. You know, for example, someone told me they'd gone to an interview and they were asked if their husband knew that they were in that interview. So you come to think of it, how does that relate with the job that the person is interviewing for? So asking such wrong questions that text or touches on a candidate's personal life, you know, how does your husband know you? Does your husband know you're here for this interview? Are you married? I don't know if there are jobs that still require people to get married. I am honestly not sure. But wrong questioning. There are also questions that are, you know, sometimes when you're having a panel and maybe the panel may want to prove themselves, they can ask questions that are off the topics. These are questions that has nothing to do with testing the ability of a candidate. So wrong questioning is one bad recruitment practice that is making you lose good people, because, you know, if someone comes and you ask them about their husband, about their wife, about their spouse, about their marital status, then it will leave them with questions of how does that have to do with my ability or with my assessment for this job. So if you're out there, you've been a victim, you're asking candidates wrong questions, you're asking them questions that do not help you with the assessment, or rather, but help you to get deeper into their personal life, you're losing good people. If you have a lot of declines of offers, then it's time you ask yourself if it is your questioning during the interview that puts off good talent at the start of your recruitment. Point number 2 is wrong interview practices. And here is where most candidates pull off of your recruitment process. So listen to this. There's so many wrong interview practices. I've just talked about wrong questioning. That is just one of them. And the reason I decided to split wrong questioning with the interview process is because it's a very heavy point, and it's a very common practice, because I see so many people complaining of the questions that they're being asked. So wrong interview practices that I want to talk about here is, number 1, when it comes to interview scheduling, giving candidates very short notice. And what happens when you give people very short notice? There's a likelihood that you're going to lose most of them because of the inability to prepare and show up on time. Number 2, if you give a very short notice period, it speaks volumes about your company, about organization, because interview process or recruitment process, it's the entire funnel. It's the entire recruitment funnel. You have the time for getting applications, shortlisting, and of course interviewing. So someone begins to question about your planning, about your decision making. So when you're coming to scheduling interviews, giving candidates short notice, starting interviews late, while sometimes you can start interviews late, but again, how do you communicate this to the candidates? Do you show remorse for it? Do you apologize? Do you inform them earlier? So these interview practices, like scheduling candidates for interviews within a very short period of time, getting late for interviews, changing interview times. I had someone tell me that their interview had been rescheduled more than 4 times. And one bad one that I don't want to leave out is canceling interviews at the last minute. It actually takes someone who's looking for a job. Personally, I still find interviews to be very hard. And by the way, how many times do I do interviews? How many times do I talk to people about interviews? If it is me who is in this other side of the recruitment seat that finds it challenging, finds it to be a very difficult job, what about a candidate who's not doing this job on a day-to-day basis? So if you cancel an interview the last minute and someone had taken a whole day to practice, someone had taken a day off, it makes you to lose good candidates in the process of your recruitment. The third bad practice, guys, is lowball offers. So let's talk about offers. Let's talk about underpaying people below the company pay line and below the market pay lines. So you're a recruiter, you're having a role. Many WhatsApp groups, especially locally in my country, Kenya, where you find a manager job posted, you read the job description, then when you get down there, you see the salary is 50,000 Kenya shillings. That's around $400. And you wonder, is this a manager? What are they going to manage? So sometimes what I say is that even as a recruiter, at what point do you have these conversations with your clients when people are hiring? Because getting good talent is not easy. And especially where we are now, where candidates or professionals have a lot of options, from offering their services as freelancers, working remotely with multinationals, to just venturing in other businesses. I always say we may get into a point where we are going to have serious talent scarcity, because people are conscious and people are actively seeking other alternatives that can be more fulfilling than getting into formal employment. So it's good to talk about these things. It's good to have conversations about these topics that can make our recruitment better. So giving lowball offers. Are your offers competitive enough? Are your salaries competitive? Because this is also one of the stages of recruitment where most candidates drop off. So it's really important to ensure that every time you're offering or when you're hiring, you try as much as possible to align it with the current pay lines and also to align it to the market pay lines for that specific role. So do your research even as an employer. Compare with peers in the industry, compare with employers at your level, and ensure that your offers are not way too low, but are within the market pay lines. The fourth one is poor communication or broken communication throughout the recruitment process. So I have heard of stories where people were called for an interview. They never heard about it. They maybe a virtual interview. They logged onto that call and they didn't see anyone. Nobody ever communicated. These are extreme examples, but they are actually real life examples. Nobody logged into that call and a candidate had been invited for an interview. I've heard of stories where interviews were rescheduled, and a candidate was just called and told, we will have this at a later date, but they never heard from the employer again. I've heard of stories where interviews were cancelled last minute without any clear communication. I've heard of stories where candidates have to wait for the longest time to get feedback. So how do you manage your communication during your recruitment? Very important, dear recruiters, dear employers, dear HR professionals. Very important that when you're inviting candidates for an interview during the recruitment process, keep very clear communication, keep constant communication, update candidates of the different levels of interviews that they're expecting, the different panels, people that they're meeting in each and every stage. Interview outcome, I don't even want to talk about that. I want to talk about that in another point because that's a heavy one. So communication, keeping communication timely, clear, and flowing throughout the recruitment process. Because if you don't communicate to guys, I realize that every time someone is recruiting, every time a candidate is interviewing, trust me, you do your research, you'll find that they are interviewing with more than one company at one particular time. So the more you're going to delay, the easier it is for you to lose a candidate in the process. So ensure that your communication flows, your communication is timely, your communication is very clear on the next steps after a candidate has had a conversation with you. What are the next steps? What are the timelines to help you keep these great talents that are very hard to get in the market? The next bad practice you don't want to do, guys, is ghosting candidates. I know this is a song that we've sung for the longest time, and it's one of the nightmare of every job seeker, being ghosted, doing applications, and you never get to hear from recruiters or from potential employers. So what this really does to you is it impacts hugely on the image of your company. And you've heard of stories where some companies will put out a job advert and nobody applies. Or even if they get very few applications. And our biggest brand ambassadors are the people who have experienced our recruitment process, who have interacted with our companies. They'll go and tell people, somebody asks them, oh, what do you think about applying for a job in this company? And they'll confidently say that is a no-go zone because they'll ghost you. You'll do an interview, you'll never get feedback. It's important that you give feedback to every candidate that interacts with your company. Even if they're not going to make it to the shortlisting, I know great companies have had the auto responses because honestly also we can't give feedback to like 1,000+ people, individualized feedback, but there's the auto responses that immediately a shortlisting is completed, it will send feedback to every person who applied to that role. So it's really important that you're able to give feedback at every stage of your recruitment. And it's important to talk about these guys because this is the only way as recruiters, this is the only way as employers, we are able to improve the recruitment process. We are able to make it more candidate focused. We are able to make it easy for us to attract the best talent in this talent landscape that is quite competitive every single day, that is quite dynamic, having changes every single day, and candidate preferences are changing every single day. And the war for talent is real. If you're not going to position as the employer of choice through this simple, we call them simple, but they are really the practices that every job seeker out there crave for. Through these little things that you're going to improve in your recruitment process, then you're going to struggle to attract the best people. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope this has been of value to you. If you're out there, you're a recruiter, you're a potential employer, these have been very important points to implement to help you improve and make your recruitment process better. So if you've watched this video up to this level, please feel free to subscribe, share this content with your friends, share this, like this video, so that next time I put out another video, you get notified. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.